What if your land could clean water and create better and stronger aquatic ecosystems? I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. It doesn't matter if you have a small farm, a homestead, or an estate. How you manage land can improve water quality in surprising ways. I want to share with you the discovery of a Mayan water filtration system 2,185 years ago that took rainwater and ran it through mats, quartz, and zeolite. The quartz and zeolite are minerals, and produced clean water that removed heavy metals, biological agents, and water is cleaner than what we get today from our modern treatment systems. I want to introduce you to bogs and marshes, including duck habitat, that does a similar function through a biological mechanism that breaks down groundwater contaminants or surface runoff contaminants and turns it into biomass. I want to introduce you to the opportunity to use water from your hardscapes, such as a driveway or rocky area, to create habitat for beneficial insects, small birds, and including amphibious animals like frogs. All of these things are possible on any size land. It's a factor of how you manage the watershed. And this is something we do early in the permaculture design, is we look at first our access, and then we look at our water. Now, a lot of times that's interchangeable because you may find a place on your property where you could have a pond, or where the ground is marshy or wet, or the ground has moving water, such as a stream. And you may want to access those points to use that water for irrigation, to use that water for entertainment. I have a friend here that has a gazebo on their lake. And you take a little road down and they have a little gazebo on the lake where they can go fishing, where they can launch off their kayaks, which they use to get to several little watershed areas within the lake to check on duck eggs or to check on some of the wildlife that's going on there. And then they also use the pond as a recreational nature. Take canoes out, take kayaks out, and just enjoy paddle boats and have a great time. In our design, we want to be looking for those opportunities because it's going to increase the usability of the land, but we also want to be looking at where does the water go after it leaves the pond? What kind of water goes into the pond? Now, a pond is a great demonstration element because there are so many commercial solutions to manage ponds. You can dye the water a certain color. You can buy fountains and filters, and you can do a lot of interesting things to keep the pond clean. But what if there were natural systems that could be implemented to make clear and clean water, support wildlife and habitat, and produce an additional value to your aquatic system? Well, it takes understanding how water moves across your property. First off, when it rains, the hardscapes will tend to move water away faster. So your roof, your driveway, a patio is going to actually move water quickly because the water cannot soak into the ground. Where rain falling on grass will tend to spread out and soak. Rain falling on a concrete or an asphalt driveway will simply just wash away. So the question needs to be asked, how does water move? Well, water always moves perpendicular to contour, tangential to contour. It's going to move in a right angle to the level of a space. So if you have a patio slab that's perfectly level, that's actually not a good thing. You need the patio slab to slope slightly away from the home so that we're not causing water to run evenly off of each side of the slab, and some of which would be running towards the house. You want it to slightly slope off so that we're moving water away from the house. Now, if we're slightly sloping a patio pad towards the yard, there's going to be one edge of that pad that's going to receive the majority of the water. So what do we put right below that pad? See, a lot of folks will have lawn right up to their patio, but you need a buffer area, and this is a key to water management, is that you need some kind of buffer area to receive the additional water, consume that water into trees. So we can do a couple things with water. We can spread and soak it. We can impound it, or we can pump it. So basically we can run it into a tree system and pump the water up into the trees. Silvopasture is great for that because the trees are planted on contour. Water into a ditch that's on contour will tend to soak and spread. Those trees will be evenly watered and absorb the moisture. The trees tend to pump water. That's what they do. That water is going to evaporate in the leaf systems, so you won't tend to have puddled water. You'll tend to have stronger growing trees, and you'll tend to have a bit of humidity around the tree line, so you can actually end up with microclimate that will make it cooler in the summer, and it adds value to the space. The key of understanding here is that what I just described is literally thinking about that drop of water coming from the sky, rolling off the roof, down the gutter, across the patio, into the garden space. Is it a rockscape garden space, or is it a heavily mulch garden space? What happens when the garden space overflows? That water goes into a drain ditch. Modern landscape very often just tries to move the water off the property as quick as possible. A permaculture design or a sustainable design is going to look to slow and spread that water out. It may include several small ponds before you get to your large pond. Each of those ponds are dropping sediment out of your groundwater flow or your surface water flow. So, for example, if you have a spring, you may have a small pond around the spring, which overflows into a larger pond. That spring pond will be cleaner and more able to be used as drinking water than the water in the larger pond. So you don't want the spring to go directly into the pond because you don't get that opportunity for the water usage. Surface water that runs off going right straight into a pond might be full of clay and other silt and organic material. So instead, running that surface water onto a small catchment will allow those materials to fall out. And then in that catchment, you can plant grasses, which over time will create this bog atmosphere. So you'll still have your large clear pond, but above the pond, receiving the surface water, the surface water is then impounded temporarily in a basin or in a pond or a low-lying area, which then is allowed to grow with a high level of biomass. So instead of having a swampy mess, you're actually going to have a large amount of biomass. Cattails are great here. Wild rice is here. We are actually going to create a habitat in addition to the pond habitat. And this is perfect if you like wild ducks. Whether you're hunting ducks or you just want to enjoy seeing them, you can actually have your main pond, and then above your pond have a large basin that's growing wild rice and taro and different aquatic plants. We actually have a whole program on edible aquatics, and you could have a wet garden that is visited by wildlife and visited by natural features, so deer and other such things. This is the abundance that we have. It all starts with water. Now, I talked about water filtration. One of the best ways to filter water on your property is to soak it into the ground. You want to move it through several layers of sand. But let's say you have gray water from your home. That gray water can be ran through a gravel and reed filtration system to make that water more usable for your tree systems, for your orchards or your timber trees. And now, instead of sending that water down a sewer line or sending that water through a septic system, you're able to take the wash water and the shower water and things like that and actually get it back into your environment while extracting nutrients. If you're not aware that every time you take a shower, a large amount of skin, dead skin primarily, comes off, and it's full of proteins. It's full of things that biology can break down and turn into useful nutrients for plants. Now, I'm really big on growing biomass, because if you can take any kind of water, surface water off a driveway, water off the top of your house, gray water, and you can turn it into biomass, that biomass is more stable to be used elsewhere in your system. So biomass from your gray water system can be composted. That compost can then be put directly on your gardens. Most of the heavy metals and other materials that could contaminate that will actually come out. if you have a bog system or a wet garden coming into your pond, nearest to your pond will be cleanest, but you would want to grow biomass upstream. That biomass upstream holds the soil in place, prevents erosion should you have a surge of water, such as a large storm, and you often can use that biomass to mulch and build up your peat or your humus in the soil. The key to understand here is that we want to trap carbon in the soil. And the more carbon you can trap in the soil, the higher the probability that you're going to be filtering water. Now, it would be great if you've got quartz and zeolite that you could build a filtration basin that would basically make clean drinking water. But it's okay also to simply have an impound area that has a number of rows of willows, for example. And those rows of willows help drain out the impound, yet also catch heavy debris before it might go into a pond area. Now, if you've got a property that you want to go over a specific design, one of the things that we can do on the telephone and in a webinar or type event is we can actually go over the contour lines and look at the opportunities. There are certain contour lines that exhibit opportunities for ponds, opportunities for marsh areas, or otherwise. Now, if you've got wet spots on your property, there's opportunities there. If you've got a roof that collects rainwater, rainwater collection can provide you input water. So if you're in an off-grid situation, or if you have a heavy irrigation need, so a lot of the houses in Texas, they'll catch the rainwater, and they'll use that for property irrigation rather than groundwater. Well, we can look at those things with you if you visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org. I'm Justin Hitt. I'm a permaculture design consultant. I've got a number of resources to help people manage their land better. And I'm really fascinated about the value, the productive value of simply managing your water on your property, whether it's a stream or a creek or a pond, whether it's water from the sky or water that runs off from other properties. You can, when managed well, actually turn it into abundance, create biomass, create fruits and vegetables, create trees and timber, create other opportunities on your small farm, homestead, or estate. Again, thanks for listening. Send your questions to www.prosperityhomestead.org. If you have not liked and subscribed to this podcast, you might want to do it now. Again, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your questions.